Over a decade ago, a bishop in the United Methodist Church named Richard Schnase published a transforming book, a wonderful gift to the United Methodist Church. Its title was The 5 Practices of a Fruitful Congregation. I remember in my previous church, I did a sermon series on it. We had Bible studies around those 5 ideas. As a matter of fact, 5 small groups emerged, each studying each one of these vital practices. And I understand the United Methodist Church did something similar to that a while back. I'd like to just name these 5 practices of a fruitful congregation. You can write them in your sermon outline. I put room in there for you to jot them down. I'm going to start with number 5 and work my way to number 1, knowing that was not Bishop Schnase's intent. It wasn't number 1 was most important, number 2 the second, and the third. All 5 of them work in synergy together. But I'll start with number 5. The 5th practice of a fruitful congregation, according to the bishop, is extravagant generosity. Not just generosity when it's convenient, but generosity that leads our life extravagantly. Number 4 was risk-taking mission. Not doing mission for the sake of mission or because you've always done that mission, but mission that takes risks. Number 3, intentional faith development, especially outside of Sunday morning. How are we developing a deeper understanding of our faith and knowing who this Jesus is? Number 2, passionate worship. A worship that is intentional, that is engaging, that transforms our spirit so that we can leave this time and place and continue the worship. Number 1 was radical hospitality. I love that one. Radical hospitality. Not just hospitality, radical. And he talked about asking yourselves, ourselves, the church, just how welcoming, just how friendly, how warm, how kind, how generous, how open we truly are. And what an example we have this morning in Mary. What radical hospitality as she spills the oil on Jesus' feet, worth a year's worth of wages. Can you imagine? Then wipes his feet with her hair. Don't miss this. Something for a woman in Palestine considered immoral, because only a husband was able to see his wife's hair unbound. Mary's actions, I believe, serve to teach us that hospitality is a spiritual discipline. It is a moral obligation of our faith. I want to take a moment and just share this concept of radical hospitality and see how it might be best expressed among the body of Christ. Because it first starts with creating an atmosphere of radical hospitality within the church. It's something that you can feel. It's palatable or not. Ours is a culture, presently, of fear. And perhaps for good reason. We lock our homes. We install elaborate alarm systems. Our children's new normal is now lockdown drills. We are reluctant to help someone, fearing it might be a setup. We prefer texting over face-to-face conversations because it's less risky. The atmosphere of the church culture needs to blend this need for safety. And my dear friends, we are doing everything in our power to keep people safe and germ-free. We're trying our very best to do the best for all. But the church and its atmosphere must blend that need for safety with the faithful witness of welcoming strangers, where the atmosphere we create disarms our fears, our preoccupations, our insecurities, and our mistrust. Reverend J. Howard Olds reminded me in my study this week this thought, that it is the mission of the church to bring people together who do not know one another. Think about that. It's the mission of what we do to bring people we don't know together with us. And only you and I can create that atmosphere to do that. What would we need to do that? Let's go back to Thomas Jefferson. When Thomas Jefferson was president, he and his entourage one day came to a river while riding on horseback. Standing on the bank was a man who approached the president and asked for a ride across the river. Jefferson gave him a lift, jumped right up on the horse, and they crossed safely to the other side. Upon dismounting the horse, several assistants of the president criticized the man for asking the President of the United States for a ride. The man said this, and it's pretty profound. He said, "Look, I didn't even know he was the President of the United States." He went on to say, "I just know that some people have a yes face and some people have a no face." And his face said yes, so I hopped on. Might I ask, from the parking lot to the pew, do we bring with us yes faces as we continue to create a culture and an atmosphere of radical hospitality? Because, friends, it secondly depends on our attitude about that. This passage takes place after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, and now the chief priests were coming after both Jesus and Lazarus, because many people were leaving the Jewish faith and following Jesus. And in so doing, two very interesting attitudes are expressed. First was Judas, who quickly criticizes her. Now, let me just take a quick poll. Have you ever done anything in life that was really good, done for the right intentions, at the right time, and got criticized? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. We've all done that. And got criticized by an armchair quarterback or someone. That's what happened here. Judas didn't care for the poor, but instead was selfish. His attitude was one of self-loathing and lack, but compare that to the attitude of Mary, whose expression of love was spontaneous. It was filled with gratitude and had no boundaries, because it wasn't about her, it was about Jesus. I love the short story from O. Henry entitled The Gift of the Magi. And I'd like to read just a short portion of it. I hope it's a blessing. It's about a young American couple named Della and Jim. They were very, very poor, but very, very much in love. Each had one unique possession. Della's hair was her glory. When she let it down, it almost served as a robe. Jim had a gold watch, which he had come by his father, and filled him with great pride. It was the day before Christmas, and Della had exactly $1.87 to buy Jim a present. So she went out and sold her hair for $20. And with the proceeds, bought a platinum fob for Jim's precious watch that was broken. When Jim came home that night and saw Della's shorn head, he stopped as if stupefied. It was not that he did not like it or loved her any less. As a matter of fact, she was lovelier then than ever. But slowly, he handed her his gift. It was a set of expensive tortoiseshell combs with jeweled edges for her lovely hair that he had sold his gold watch to buy. Each had given the other all there was to give, because real love cannot think of any other way to give. Friends, as believers, our attitude is formed by responding to God's radical hospitality to us. And in so doing, we need to constantly ask the question, what attitude of my heart is limiting my hospitality toward others? What's in my heart that's keeping me from reaching out? I mean, really reaching out, really connecting, really seeking those we do not know. What is it within us? What is that fear that keeps us from radical hospitality? Because when God's grace overwhelms us, how can we do anything else? Because ultimately, radical hospitality is about taking action. Hospitality is nothing more than love in action. In my study this week, it reminded me that love does not need to be regulated. We don't need a love committee. It doesn't need to be programmed or institutionalized. All we need to do is to create the space and just do it. In other words, our mission is to produce Nike moments and just do it. But often we fail. You've never heard this next story I'm sharing with you now. It's the story of Dr. Reverend Bob Goodrich, the pastor of the First United Methodist Church in Dallas, Texas, who was the pastor at the time that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. With tears in his eyes the following Sunday after the assassination, he lamented to his congregation the following. He said, Lee Harvey Oswald lived only 3 blocks from our church. But so far as I know, no one from this congregation, including myself, ever called on him, or invited him to church, or expressed any interest at all in him during that time. So I need to ask you, do we have any responsibility for what just happened in our world? The present-day church, amidst all of its loneliness, isolation, brokenness, and fear, I believe in my humble opinion, that our culture today may do much better if the church perhaps saw itself moving from being a church toward being hospitality centers. To move from the institution to relationship. To become and be an atmosphere where people are excited to bring people together. That's what jazzes us up. To bring people together. To create and have an attitude profoundly responding to God's love. And be involved in a ministry and action that creates the spaces and places to do one thing and one thing only. Love. Simply love. I end with this. Even as a kid, I was always amazed by the last part of the third verse of this chapter. And it says this: the house was filled with the aroma of perfume. Let that sink in just for a moment. The house was filled with the aroma of this radical hospitality. Might I ask, on this day, what fills this house this morning? Is it radical hospitality? Is it an atmosphere that is palatable? Is it filled with attitudes who just can't wait to meet someone new, to embrace and to mentor and to just simply love? What fills my heart then with every breath I take? Let us pray. Holy God, you have poured over us the oil of your love from head to toe. That oil of love seeps into our spirits. And we get the holy privilege of being here this morning to smell the aroma of that love. So that we might share it with others. Lessen our fear, our anguish, and free us up to simply love. In your name I pray. Amen.